And so it's my absolute pleasure to officially welcome you and kick off this amazing webinar series. This program is called the Build Up. It's a financial literacy program particularly created for artists. And so it's an absolute pleasure to be presenting this program over the next couple of weeks. My name is Darren August. I have the absolute privilege of being your host. I'm so looking forward to spending the next 4 weeks with every single one of you as we continue to just keep building up and building on our financial futures. That's really what this program is about. It's really going to be an exciting program, but what you put in is what you get out. And so I want to encourage you right at the offset to be as engaged as possible, ask your questions, make your comments in the chat, connect on the Facebook group, connect on the website. It's going to be an amazing experience if you take the opportunity. And so welcome. Just a couple of things to get out the way before we get started is every week, we are going to have a webinar on a Tuesday, and then we will have a masterclass on a Thursday. All right. And so over the next 4 weeks, twice a week, we're going to get together. The webinar will be where we'll present quite a bit of content. We'll have guests, and then we'll have a masterclass, which will be a shorter version of this program, where an expert will come in and literally be delivering specific content to the topic of the day. Going to be extremely exciting. I can assure you that the team have searched far and wide to make sure that we bring you the best guests, the most informed guests, and people who are really going to impart so much into you that you are absolutely going to be left with no choice but to build up and to grow in your financial life. All right, each week there will be prizes for 2 participants who are engaged and have stayed until the end. So please, I encourage you to stay until the end. I encourage you to participate through the chat. If there are any issues, just comment in the chat. You can also use the Q&A. Okay, so there's a Q&A and a chat block at the bottom, or tab, sorry. And so please feel free to use either the Q&A or the tab block, and we'll be able to connect with you that way. Again, I'm not running this alone. I've got an entire team helping me out, and so they are monitoring the chat. And so if there are any issues, Crystal will assist you in the background, but please feel free to connect with us, engage with us. If you've got questions for the speakers, pop it in the chat, and we will get through to it at the end. And then there will be a dedicated Facebook page, as I've been mentioning, and so more information and more interaction is going to be encouraged in the Facebook group. So please do connect in the Facebook group. The link is in the chat right now, and so make sure that before the end of the webinar that you at least join the Facebook group. Then, of course, we have a special website as well dedicated to this program. And so the website address is www.buildup.org.za, and it will be in the chat as well. So please connect on the website. Remember that there will be replays available of the webinars. So if for any reason you'd like to go back and watch some of the content again, that's what the website is about, and that's what the website is for. Also, there's some great tools available on the website, really just to extend this experience a little bit beyond just the 2 hours that we have together on a Tuesday or the 1 hour that we have together on a Thursday. Let me give you an idea of where we are going over the next 4 weeks, all right? And so today we're kicking off with webinar 1, and you can see that we've got webinar, then masterclass, webinar, then masterclass. So that's going to be the structure of the program over the next 4 weeks. Today we're kicking off with budgeting. Then we'll have a masterclass on Thursday talking about side hustle. After that, we're going to transition into saving and investing. Then we're going to talk about building your brand. We're then going to talk about business management and move into tax and accounting. Then a little bit later, towards the end of the program, we're going to touch on finances and mental wellness, such an important topic for the time that we're living in right now. And then we're going to end off this webinar series with talking about intellectual property. And that's going to be our final masterclass on the 2nd of December. And so a jam-packed month lined up. And as I mentioned, it's going to be absolutely great. It's going to be absolutely engaging, and I'm sure that you are going to enjoy the program as well. I'm going to do my best to show up 100% for every one of you every week, and I'm expecting for you to do the same. Simply show up and really, really just absorb and be like a sponge over the next week. The people that we will be exposing you to are really, really they have a wealth of knowledge, and so I believe that a couple of questions you may have had for the longest time are going to be answered on these webinar programs. So before we kick off, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about the ASISA Foundation, who really are behind this entire program. And so the ASISA Foundation, for those of you who may not know, is a non-profit organization founded by the Association for Savings and Investment South Africa. That's where the acronym ASISA comes from. Founded in 2013, and the ASISA Foundation initiates and implements meaningful consumer financial literacy programs like these, all right, targeting South Africa's most vulnerable groups on behalf of the savings and investment industry. Various programs that the foundation conducts. A couple of them are called WageWise, Flame. We've got the L Plus Earn program, and then of course Build Up, which is the program you're participating in, which is particularly crafted and engineered for artists in partnership with the Stand Foundation. And so for those of you who may not know the Stand Foundation is the Sustaining Theatre and Dance Foundation, and that is an independent nonprofit as well. The vision is to nurture and promote and celebrate South African dance and theatre activities. And of course, we understand that during COVID, so many artists, and this industry was one of the industries that was really worst hit. And so the Stand Foundation has partnered with the ASISA Foundation to bring you this program. And we really are, it is our goal to make sure that we empower you with great knowledge and that we really get you going, not only as individuals, but as business owners, as freelancers, as artists. That's what this program is all about. And so please do feel free to check out the ASISA Foundation, the Stand Foundation. And remember that the dedicated website for this program is www.buildup.org.za. Let's get into today's webinar, and we're going to kick off with a very, very powerful saying. I think every time I see it, it absolutely hits home. And so for today's topic is budgeting. And I love how Dave Ramsey puts it. And he says, a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went, all right? I think too many of us look back and at the end of the month, we have more month than money. And so hopefully we're going to start changing that narrative by using, and really today, I think today we are sort of going right back to basics, because budgeting is literally the basics. And so when it comes to budgeting, I think budgeting 101 all hinges on understanding needs and wants. That really is the basics. If you are able to determine the difference between what is a need and what is a want, that's where it starts. And so when it comes to needs and wants, we need to be able to distinguish what a need is and what a want is. And we need to be able to understand that that is the first process in the budgeting process, right? And of course, we all have different needs, we all have different wants. Just as our faces differ, our needs differ. And so it's very important that we realize that our needs differ. But when it comes to budgeting, we need to understand that we need to prioritize spending according to our needs first, all right? And so very, very important. Prioritize our needs and then include wants if it's possible, all right? And obviously we live in a world where there's so much pressure. We are bombarded with advertising. And so we could very easily fall prey to bad habits. And so that is the reason why budgeting is so essential, and why we need to realize what our real essential needs are. All right. Do we really need the best cell phone? Do we really need the top of the range device? Or do we simply need to be able to make calls, answer calls, send SMSs? And so even when we list something as a need, we need to still interrogate what the real essentials are. All right, if we are going to control our spending. And so, as I mentioned, up on the screen right now, we can see there, do we really need the top of the range phone, or are we able to get by with what we do? Now, I know you wouldn't be able to watch a webinar on one of those cell phones on the left of your screen, all right? But the point is that we need to interrogate our spending, interrogate our needs, and interrogate our wants. I mean, another example, we all know it's a need. It's important for us to be fit. It's important for us to be healthy. But do we really need the most expensive gym membership? Do we really need the most expensive gym gear? Or are we able to get fit and healthy even in the comfort of our own homes? All right. And so it's so important that we prioritize what is important when it comes to needs and wants. And so no matter how much money you earn, doesn't matter how much you earn, we always need to understand that it is important to know how much money we have to spend and what we'll be spending it on, all right? Because this creates a picture of what we're spending our money on. And then we need to be able to start disciplining ourselves to spend only what we have and not live beyond our means, because that's where all of the problems start, is when we are living beyond our means. And so budgeting is also a management tool that we use to assess our spending behavior. All right. And so we can build towards our financial goals. If we can't build if we don't have a plan. And so budgeting really is a plan. And I know that we all know this, practice it. And that's why, as I mentioned, today is really going to be going back to basics. Somebody is asking if a replay will be available. Yes, there will be a replay available on the website, but please do stay until the end because there's no guarantees. We know with the way things go, anything could happen and the recording might not save. So please try and stay for as long as you can, and preferably until the end of the webinar. All right. Continue talking about budgeting. So a couple of principles that we need to put in place when it comes to budgeting. And the first one is always budget before you receive income. I know so many of us think we can have our budget in our head, all right? But it's very important to budget before we receive income, not only when it's there. Then we need to budget regularly. It's not a once-off exercise, right? We need to be doing it on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, whenever we get a recurring income or whenever we receive an income, sorry. And then very important is to include all sources of income when we're doing our budgeting, all right? So if you've got a side hustle, if you're getting an allowance, if you're getting a stipend somewhere, every single bit of income needs to be included in your budget if you are going to do it effectively. And then I've touched on this already earlier on, but it's so important to budget for your needs first and then your wants, all right? You don't want to find yourself wearing the fanciest clothes and then not having a roof over your head. And so very important that you budget for needs before wants. We understand that expenses differ. We've got our fixed expenses and then we have variable expenses. And so important that we budget for the fixed expenses first. And if we get to the place where we need to start adjusting, start by adjusting the variable expenses, and cut down on the wants, all right? And then absolutely crucial is that we have to include savings in our budget as well, all right? And that could be saving for emergencies or saving towards a goal. Very important. So many of us budget and don't include savings in our budget. It has to be part of your budget. We understand that emergencies happen, and so all of a sudden somebody shows up, you need to feed them. Somebody comes and says, oh, they're coming to visit, and they end up staying for 10 days. These are all unexpected emergencies that occur. Petrol price increases, and we often only hear that about a week before it happens. And so it's so important that we understand that we need to include emergency savings in our budget as well, right? And so make sure that in your budget you have some allocation for emergencies, and so that you don't have to borrow, because that's what happens so often. If you're not able to meet that budget, if you're not able to, or if an emergency pops up, what happens is you then are forced to borrow money, and again it starts a terrible cycle for some of us of debt and recurring debt, and then we battle to get out of these holes. And so it all starts with budgeting correctly, and again include savings for emergencies in your budget. How can you do this? Obviously, write it down. I feel like that's probably the easiest way to start. Write it down, be systematic about it, all right, so that you can see the numbers. That's very important, because that gives you the perspective. It can be on pen and paper, or you can use a template, you can use an Excel spreadsheet. There are budgeting apps these days where you can literally record every single cent you spend on an app, and you're able to track your spending. Then there is a great tool available on the website. So if you go to the buildup.org.za website, there is a great budgeting tool that you're able to get off the BuildUp website and use it. It's absolutely going to revolutionize your budgeting, all right? I use it personally, and it's a great tool for you to keep track of your spending. Very important that it needs to be done, as I mentioned earlier on, budgeting is not done in isolation. It needs to be done all the time. And every person in the family needs to be a part of this budget, all right? So you know how much you're getting, you know how much you're spending, and so that it becomes a discussion that everybody is involved in. And so, of course, the central part of budgeting is tracking our expenses against our budget to see if we've spent more or less than what we've planned, all right? And so the budget is the plan, but we need to go back to our budget all the time to track our spending and see, okay, so where am I? And that's why your budget needs to have your budgeted amount and then your actual amount, so that you can see, all right, am I able to reduce some spending somewhere? Am I overspending somewhere? And you can only make those decisions, and you can only get to those conclusions if you are really, really tracking your spending. That's what budgeting is. It's not just about saying where it's going to go. It's really about telling your money where to go as well. All right. And so a couple of things that we need to also take into account is to always have money put aside for savings and save towards emergencies as well. And I've said that already, all right? Then I know that when it comes to talking about money, this can be such an uncomfortable conversation for many people. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but it's so important that we actually start becoming comfortable with communicating about money. And so very important for us to realize that money is an important part of our lives. And so it's a great skill to be able to talk about money, right? Because it helps how we manage our money. And so very important is that we are assertive when it comes to our money management and talking about money. If you are, for instance, right, let's say you need to communicate about money with family. It's important that you are able to communicate with your family. If you're the primary earner, perhaps you're the breadwinner, people need to know what the expectation is. All right. Sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you're the one working, and so everybody just assumes that you're able to help every single person in the family. But if you're not comfortable communicating about money, that's where the problem comes in. And so if you are able to only assist to a certain extent, it's your responsibility to communicate that to the rest of your family. All right. You need to be able to establish boundaries when it comes to talking to family about money. Then, when it comes to communicating about money, there are times where you will communicate with creditors. We all know that sometimes you've got loans, you've got accounts, and so how you communicate with those creditors is just as important, right? When you owe people money, before you even take up credit, sometimes it's important to understand that there's costs involved, that there's fees involved. And so make sure that you understand all of that. And then, of course, when you get to the point where you possibly cannot pay your debt, it's important that you communicate as well. All right. That you be proactive. So don't wait for private numbers to be calling you. Rather make arrangements. Let your creditors know that there is a situation where you possibly won't be able to pay, or you will pay late, and communicate upfront so that you're able to still maintain a good credit record, maintain a good credit score, not have people listing you negatively for your credit behavior. All right. And so very important. And then, of course, we do know that in South Africa, there is the option of going under debt review when there are not opportunities, or when there are situations where you are simply not coping with all of the debt that you have. But it's important to communicate. All right. Very, very important. And then, of course, we obviously communicate with financial institutions as well. As simple as opening a little savings account or opening a bank account, it's so important that you are able to communicate about money and feel comfortable with asking questions like, how much can I be expected to pay in terms of interest? What are the fees associated with this account that I'm opening? What date does my statement close? And when is my first payment due? So important that you are comfortable communicating about money, because it is an integral part of our lives, and we cannot get away from it. And so we have to get comfortable with talking about money. And then, guys, as I know a lot of us on the webinar are artists and freelancers, it's so important that we are able to differentiate between personal and business money. And so one of the main reasons why businesses fail is because we can't track, and especially small businesses, because it's hard to track the separation between business and personal income. All right. And so as a result, sometimes people are running a business, but because they're individuals or it's a small business, the business subsidizes the household subsidizes the business, and there's no clear distinction between the two. But it's so important that we do differentiate between what is personal money, what is business money. All right. And so I know that this doesn't always happen deliberately, but it happens. And so it's so important that we are able to differentiate between the two. And so how do we do it? First thing is pay yourself a salary from your business. All right. And so if you are in a business, pay yourself a salary so that you're able to keep it, you're able to start and keep that separation going. And then each time you receive money for the business, it's not yours, it's the business, okay? And we're going to talk about this a little bit later with our first guest. Then, of course, personal income, understand what personal income is, and that needs to be used for personal expenses. Business income is for business expenses. And where possible, keep separate accounts. As far as possible, keep separate accounts so that you're able to keep that differentiation going. And then just a couple more, set up separate bank accounts. That's a great way. Keep documents and receipts separately as well. Prepare separate budgets for business and personal income, and then draw a line between the two for tax purposes as well. Keep track of shared expenses. And then the last one, which is when you use personal finance for business purposes or the other way around, refund all right? And so refund yourself or refund the business so that you're able to see those transactions and you're able to keep track of it, and maintain that separation between business and personal income. Very, very important. And so I know that for most people, the business can look like this, where there's the supply coming in, but it's going out quicker, all right, or it's going out just as quickly as it comes in. And so it's very important that we understand how we can navigate the situation. And so when it comes to looking at our business like that, so obviously the bucket represents our business. The tap represents, let me go back quickly. So the tap represents the income coming in, the bucket represents the business, and then we can obviously see that there's expenses and there's spending that's happening, all right? And so the goal is to try and find out how we can best manage the situation. And so we can either, so the bucket might fill up depending on how fast the water is flowing, all right, and how big the hole is. But of course, the bucket could also leak, and we can find ourselves with a situation where that bucket is almost empty, especially if the supply stops. And so if we were to think of ways to fill this bucket, some solutions would be plug the holes, or line the bucket with something, or use another bucket, all right, or open the tap a little bit more. And so I think the lesson in all of this is really that there are only two ways for us to navigate the situation, and that is to either close the holes, all right, and that means use less, or otherwise increase the sources, and that means earn more. And so on the next slide, you'll see that's the only two ways that we can do that, is get more money, earn more money, or spend less, all right? It's as simple as that. And so the only way we can do that is by keeping tight control, making sure that we are budgeting, making sure that we are tracking our spending so that we don't have a situation where we end up with too much money at the end of the money. All right, and so I'm going to stop there for a moment, and I'm going to introduce our first guest. All right, let me know what you thought of that so far. If you do have any questions, I would absolutely love to know what you thought of that, or if you have any questions on the content I've just gone through. But without further delay, allow me to welcome our first guest. His name is Vuyisile Mpela. He is the managing director and founder of Mpela Production. As a performing artist, he has 22 years of experience in acting, singing, voice, puppetry, directing, and writing. He has acted in many television dramas and has worked with corporates and NGOs. Working with young people in schools, community-based organizations, and companies, Mpela provides extensive training on life skills, HIV and AIDS, sexual health, employment assistance programs, and financial literacy, and a whole lot more. We've literally shortened his CV because otherwise that would be a 2-hour presentation on its own. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Vuyisile Mpela. I'm going to ask you to put your camera on, and I'm going to stop sharing my presentation, and you and I are going to have a quick conversation.
Thank you very much, Darren.
Where do you find yourself today, Vuyisile, in our beautiful South Africa?
I'm somewhere here in Parktown City, making sure that load shedding does not disturb me to be able to do this informative session.
Awesome stuff. Vuyisile, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your time. We're going to get straight into the discussion. And I think the first question is, so you're a professional actor, 22 years of experience. What has it meant to remain committed to the journey and remain self-employed in business, creating work opportunities for yourself and others for all of these years?
I missed your question, Darren. You just hang there just for a second. Can you please maybe repeat?
Sure. So I started by saying that you've been in this space for 22 years, right?
Yes.
How have you managed to remain self-employed? What has it meant for you? We know that a lot of artists struggle and are not able to remain self-employed for this length of time. How have you been able to do it?
Okay, thank you very much, Darren. I think the most important thing that I actually try to do, and I'm still trying to do it, and I try to perfect it always, is to be disciplined. Because discipline will always help one to be able to sustain yourself, because with discipline, sustainability, it's very easy. But if I'm not disciplined as a performer or as a business person in terms of me running my own company, I won't be able to carry myself to the next day. That is what actually cripples us as most artists, because if I'm not disciplined, it means I'll just be spending money recklessly. I'll be doing this and that, which is not which does not give me any sustainability. So sustainability and discipline. Thank you.
Okay, so what are the realities of being an artist? When it comes to budgeting, we know that obviously with a salary, so when somebody gets a fixed salary, it's easier to budget because we know there's a steady income, we know there's a specific date. But as an artist, what does it mean to the budgeting process? And especially because you're expecting different amounts at various times of the month. What does that mean, and how do you navigate that?
Darren, I'm sure the artists that are online, they will attest to this. Like when you say, what does it take? It takes first me getting a job first. I first need to get a job. Like you said, there's no like monthly income. So firstly, I need to get myself a job. It means I need to go up and down on to auditions and all of that, and maybe do proposals and all of that. So if I actually are able to do that, then after doing actually that, it becomes much easier for me after I have a job and know that, okay, from this job, what are the things that I need to acquire for me to be able to continue being employed, to continue maybe having like money coming into my account, maybe from an employer or from a client. So it goes back again to discipline, because it's very difficult. There's like, the artist can attest, there's like limited numbers of work out there. So one needs to even maybe try and create your own like something, so that you are maybe do something else, a side hustle. But I can't go deep on that because I know that on Thursday you'll be dealing with this. So yeah, that is that.
Okay, so what are some of the ways that you've or that have helped you separate personal and business income? We spoke about it earlier on. So we know that you are Vuyisile, but you also have a company called Mpela Mpela. And how have you been able to keep those two separate or separated and differentiate between personal and business income?
All right, Darren, it's not easy. I don't want to lie. However, first and foremost, I think even earlier someone asked me, so are you working for that particular company as two different entities? And I said, yes. So I need to make sure that I know what services I needed from who, because as like at times I need to like go to a company as an individual, and then I also sometimes need to go there as a company. And that distinction needs to be clearly made. I first need to know, what does Vuyisile, what are the services that Vuyisile, an individual, offer? I need to know what are the services that a company called Mpela Mpela Production offer. And these are supposed to be two. You could be talking to the same person for both of them, but they are two separate. And even like you correctly said, in your in the beginning, you spoke about two separate accounts. One needs to also have separate accounts for everything. Whenever I do work from Mpela Mpela, the money goes into that account, and I do not just access it by maybe just running there and saying, no, this is my money. No, it's not my money. It's the company's money. So I think, yeah, that is that.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about COVID-19. We know that COVID-19 obviously affected artists in particular quite a bit. How has it affected you as an artist, as a business owner, in terms of budgeting?
Okay, in terms of budgeting, COVID-19 actually crippled all of us. And the government tried to like intervene with the stipends and all of that. However, it was not easy. So in terms of budgeting, there was no income. So budgeting was like to zero. So one had to rely on the savings that one had done before, so that you actually, the one thing that I can say, Darren, is that it actually helped me to be able to like stretch a rent, be able to go to the needs and wants, like you said earlier, go deeper into them. Do I really need this? Do I really have to do this for me to be able to maybe get to tomorrow? Because if I don't have money coming in, I can't budget. So with the little that I had to sit down and like dissect it, so that even now, as we have started working, it actually helped. COVID, because now one knows that anything can happen anytime, because it actually caught all of us off guard. But if it was to come again and then we are caught, we cannot be caught wanting. So it helped in terms of budget, and it also helped in terms of planning.
Are there a couple of specific adjustments you can share with us that you implemented, that you were able to make in terms of your budget, or even your finances? What are some specific adjustments that you made?
One thing that I remember speaking to my wife, and I said to her, because obviously now as Vuyisile, I have to sit down with her, and when we do the budget for the household, and I said to her, look, are there things that we can actually cut that we actually do not need, in terms of, an example of the things that we actually had to cut was to cut maybe the DSTV, because it felt like it's a luxury. It's something that one can live without. I'd rather have maybe books or keep me busy, like in terms of me being able to grow, and something that would even enhance me as a performer to actually be better. So maybe one had to cut that down. Traveling, like unnecessary traveling. If I start my car, that's one thing that we have agreed upon. If one starts a car, that the traveling needs to actually yield income one way or another, unless if it's something that is maybe urgent or family orientated or something. But just, like you're driving, I'm just going on a cruise or whatever. It doesn't work nowadays. So goes back to needs and wants again.
So I think the final question, and there might be a couple more, but what tips would you give to other artists and theatre practitioners on maintaining budgets? And also, I think, just on mastering the art of discipline, because as we've said so many times, it's easier said than done.
Yeah, Darren, it's like you say, it's not easy. So the only thing that one needs to know to do is that I always have a goal. I know where I want to go. So if I know where I want to go, I need to know what do I need for me to reach my destination. So, and if I know how to reach my destination, that will actually help me to be able to budget, or to be able to plan around me being able to reach that destination. So planning and discipline are the key things that actually help all of us to be able to reach our destination. Other things that one needs to do is, as artists, we sometimes fall victim, Darren, in wanting to please other people. Like I want to, like you said earlier, I want to have the most recent or the most beautiful phone. I want to drive a fancy car. I want things for people to look at me and respect me for because of the things that I have. So I think it's about time we forget about pleasing other people, but start doing things that actually mean something to you. So that way, when you budget, it becomes easier for you to actually stick more on your needs than your wants, which are people-pleasing stuff.
Vuyisile, I think that's such great insights that you've dropped in the short while that we've had this conversation. We're gonna pause it there for now. I think we'll probably have a couple more questions for you when we get to the Q&A session, but don't go too far away. Also, I want you to think of a tip for the week. All right, and so before we end of the webinar, I will ask you for your tip of the week. But for now, any final words before we say short, a little bit of a goodbye?
No, nothing. Thank you very much, Darren, for the opportunity granted to me.
Okay, we'll catch up with you later. That's Vuyisile Mpela. I think really just reiterating how important it is to budget and then to be able to be flexible with it and make those adjustments. Next up is Natasha Hart. For over 2 decades, Natasha has been driving financial wellness for her clients through developing a leading mindset in the financial planning sector. She has a Bachelor of Commerce, a postgraduate diploma in financial planning, and a double advanced diploma in financial planning. In 2010, Natasha was only the second woman to receive the prestigious Financial Planner of the Year award from the Financial Planning Institute of South Africa. Natasha, what a privilege to have you on the webinar this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here. Okay, so thank you, everyone. I love talking to people about their budgets. which might sound a bit strange because it's not a topic that people like to talk about very much. So Darren, thank you so much for setting the scene. I'm going to follow on what you've already shared with us. So there will be a bit of duplication, but you know, some things are important enough that we need to repeat it. I also just want to put it out there that I understand everyone's circumstances are different. Not everything I'm going to share today might be relevant to your personal circumstances right now. But what I want you to do is just listen. And even if you only take one thing from today that you can change your behavior, then we've had a successful session. So let's get started. And there we go. I've broken it up a bit to just share with us how important our history is and where we come from. So, you know, certain things are hardwired into us as human beings. The most well-known example is the fight and flight scenario. You know, in the beginning of mankind, when they were there on the plains and the lion arrived, they had a choice. Was it, am I going to fight the lion and kill it and eat it, or am I going to run away? And when I was preparing for today, I was wondering, or I was thinking, you know, as artists, I think you guys have the most experience with fight or flight. I mean, imagine standing on that stage the first time. I think that takes us back to human nature at the core. Also at this stage, would like to thank you as artists for the work you do. You know, society's health is determined by how much they pay attention to the art, and your perseverance in maintaining your art and sharing your art in whichever form it is important for us as a society in South Africa. And I don't think we thank you often enough. So thank you very much for everything you do for the soul of South Africa. But let's get back to where we come from. Now, if you think about your own life, I want you to take a moment and sit there and think, what was your first memory of money? What's the first thing that popped into your mind? Now, if you're brave enough to share in the chat, I would appreciate it. But if you're not comfortable, no need to worry. But just take a moment and think of the first memory you have of money.
Let's give it a few seconds. So guys, if you would in the chat quickly, let's answer that question. So think back. I know for some of us it's been years, but think back to your first memory. Did you say your first memory, Natasha, of money?
Yeah. So if I say the word money, what is the first thing that pops into your head? The most, you know, don't go and think of a story. Think of the first thing. So I'll give you an example. Often when I ask people this question, they say they remember their mother saying to them, money doesn't grow on trees.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer.
Sorry, Darren. The other one that pops up is, do you think I'm made of money?
Yeah. Here's one that says, when my dad gave me money for lunch. So that's Tandeka's first memory, is receiving money for lunch.
That's a nice memory. Thank you. Let's see if anyone else wants to share. Well, while we give them a chance to share, I'll share my memory of money. So my dad, I think I just started primary school. My dad said to me that I was not allowed to receive my pocket money in cash. I had to have a bank account because he wanted to teach me the discipline of putting money away, not just having access to the money and having to go physically to the bank to draw the cash. And I think for that, I will be forever grateful, because it was such a part of my upbringing that it set the tone for the rest of my life. So I'm fortunate that I have a very positive memory of money. Oh, I see there's some messages came through. Darren, would you like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So Bongiwe says her first memory is, there's no money in this household. Wake is saying, the first thing I think of when I think of money or when I get money is investing.
Wonderful.
Maya says, I remember finding someone else's money in a parking lot and desperately trying to find the person it belonged to. Nice one. And then Tabiso says, saving for rainy days.
Oh, I'm impressed. These are very good answers. Now, the reason why I asked the question is, if you look back at your first memory of money and you think about how you approach money today, there tends to be a link. So if you have a positive influence or positive memory of money, you tend to have a positive relationship with money. If it was not so good, if the experience was not so easy, then you tend to have a different relationship with money. And I want you to think about how you approach money as we go through the rest of the talk. Then, I'm not sure if any people in the audience have got children, but I also want you to take it further and think about the impact you are having on your children and their future relationship with money. So this is just as an aside, but we must be very careful with the words we use when we talk about money, when we deal about money, for ourselves, for our children, and for our bigger family. Because, you know, the words we use become our behaviors, and that can have an impact on how successful we are in the future when we look at the money we earn. So, okay, we now understand we have a relationship with money, and therefore it might impact how we make decisions with money on a daily basis. Now, the next part, I don't want to scare you, but I just want to put a few things in perspective. So now we know where we're coming from, and although we're talking about budgeting today, it's always important to think about where we're going. Yes, we love, especially artists, love what you do. It's rewarding, it's creative, but you're doing it to earn an income, not just to sustain yourself daily, but also to provide for yourself in the future when you're not able to work anymore. So we must always have in mind that we also have to save for the future. Now, this is the part where I don't want to scare you, but I think this is a very powerful exercise to do. So, Darren, I hope everyone's got a smartphone that's got a calculator on. Otherwise, this exercise is not going to work. But what I want you to do is I want to write down your current age. So in my example, the lady is 40. I've made myself a bit younger, I know, but it works for the calculation. And let's just say if your age is 40, and then you write down the age you would like to be either financially independent or in a position to retire. Be realistic. Don't make it next year. You know, put an age that you think you'll be able to maintain your craft until. So in this example, I'm 40. I want to retire at 60. That means I have 20 years left to provide for my future while earning a living currently. Now, this is where the scary part happens. If I take that 20 times 12 paychecks, and I know artists don't get regular paychecks, but to make the calculation simple and for us to understand, you take your 20 times 12, which means I will only earn 240 paychecks until I retire. Okay. Now, you can go and Google your life expectancy, but as a rule, depending what age you've set, so if you said you wanted to retire at 55, then you can add another 40 years. If you wanted to retire at 65, you can add another 30 years. But, you know, just add another, for ease of reference, I said on the actuarial tables, my life expectancy, or this lady's life expectancy would be 79. So that's 19 years that you need to look after yourself. It's 19 years that you need to provide a paycheck for yourself. So in this case, 19 times 12 gives us 228. So I, in this example, will earn 240 paychecks, and I will have to pay myself 228 paychecks. Now, why am I asking you to do this calculation? Because if you thought a budget was just about what I'm spending monthly, you're now going to rethink this. And I hope that you will rethink every paycheck you receive, because every paycheck you receive is an opportunity to make a good decision with the money that you get. Okay, I hope I didn't scare anyone. Does anyone need a moment or so to do their calculation?
I think we can't avoid being scared by it.
No, I think there's some people that could be excited. There were some people that said they're new to the industry, so I'm assuming they're young. So they might have a bit more paychecks left. Any questions at this point?
Not yet.
Okay, perfect. Happy for me to move on.
Please do.
So we now, I want you to think how you feel about money, and I want you to have an objective view on the importance of every paycheck you're going to earn. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. And this is obviously a topic that is very top of mind, and I do understand that people's circumstances have changed dramatically due to COVID. But I would like us to focus on more of the general principles around debt. And I acknowledge that there's unique circumstances. I acknowledge that sometimes, especially during the pandemic, one is forced to make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. So I understand that, and I don't want to downplay that, but I want us to just look at the principles around debt. So even if you find yourself in not such a good position right now, like Darren said, there are actions you can take to help you get out of it. But for those who may be just looking forward, wants to look at debt with fresh eyes, I want to share some thoughts. So Darren, you stole my saying for today. I don't know if you saw my presentation, that's why you stole it, but yes. When looking at debt and budgeting, it's often a matter of how much month you have left at the end of your money. And that's why budgeting can tend to be quite a negative experience. But I'm going to try and share some thoughts with you around how we can make it more positive. But let's first look at debt. And the first thing we need to be aware of is debt is not necessarily a bad thing. We have good debt and we have bad debt. And you'll be pleased to see that a business falls into what we call good debt. But that's why it's so important to manage your business, especially if you are your business. You have to manage it in a professional manner and see it as a separate entity. You need to see the part where you are the business, as a separate entity. Obviously, a home loan is seen as good debt. Very few people have the ability to buy a house cash. And then this hire purchase, buying a car. As South Africans, we love fancy cars, and that goes back to wants and needs. It's very important when making that decision to make it for the right reason and not for the image. There's very scary stats out there where we have youngsters in the professional, business environment renting a one-bedroom or renting a bedroom only so that they can be driving a fancy car to be seen arriving in a fancy car. And that is so short-sighted, and that can get you into trouble. So transport is very important. Transport is important for you to get to work, to earn an income, and for safety reasons. So it is part of it, but make informed decisions. And I'm going to talk around how to do that a bit later. Now, I'm going to go into a bit of bad debt, a bit more detail just now. And I'm going to also repeat that, yes, I understand that some people had to live on credit during COVID because there was no income, but be aware of the cost of the credit. Avoid microloans as far as possible. The interest rate they charge, it's scary. I've seen some interest rates where I thought it was illegal, but apparently they're allowed to charge those rates and demand the payment. And then again, around the emotions, when we're in tough times, when things aren't great and we get some income, we tend to want to reward ourselves and make emotional purchases. So just be careful around those things, because those are the bad debts that can worsen your position over time. But let's look at it in a bit more detail. When looking at your budget, and you've now written it down, one of the things I'm going to encourage you is to understand how much of your budget goes to debt repayment. There's no magic formula, but it's one of those first steps to make sure you take control if you're out of control, or that you don't get into trouble, that you understand what your debt repayments are, because debt repayments should be a priority payment, because, you know, non-payment can make you lose your house, it could get you blacklisted, it can have severe consequences if you don't maintain your debt or your credit rating. When I say pay most expensive debt first, that's relating to short-term debt. So the shorter the debt, so credit cards and that, has a much higher interest rate. So be careful with having more than one credit card, and pay that debt first. Obviously, you must also pay your home loan, but try and get the short-term debt cleared as soon as possible. And then obviously the important thing is don't start the debt again if you can at all costs. Okay. And then we've touched on the rainy day fund, but a lot of people had a rainy day fund. They had to use it during COVID. And now as work starts coming back and activities start coming back, don't forget to replenish that. You know, as Darren said, saving should be part of your budget at all times. And now we get to the nitty-gritty of your budget. And this is where I'm going to repeat some of the stuff that Darren said. But this is the one thing you have absolute control over. You don't need an advisor to sit with you. You don't need anyone to sit with you. But this is also the part where you can lie to yourself. So if you're not honest with yourself, you are never going to move forward. So the first thing you need to do is to have it written down. And I know I'm repeating it, but this is so important. Write it down. But don't write it down and then forget about it. Write it down, compare what you thought you spent with what you actually spent, and then adjust. Now I'm going to share a tip with you that I apply to myself to try and that makes budgeting a bit more of a positive experience. And that is, the first line item in your budget should have your name. Your name should be that first line item. Why do I say that? Because you work very hard for the income when it comes, and then you feel like, I've worked hard, the money arrives, and it just disappears. I just have to pay everyone else, and I get nothing for the work I've done. And that normally then leads you to go, I don't want to know what's happening. I don't want to deal with this. I don't care. I'm going to go and buy a new pair of shoes, which is the worst possible thing to do, because now you've just gone backwards. So by putting your name as the first line item, now don't allocate 90% of the income to that line item either. Put a small reward in there for yourself. So I don't drink coffee, but my husband is a coffee addict. So his line item is that he's allowed once a week to stop at his favorite takeaway coffee shop on his way to work and buy himself a proper good coffee. And that is his reward, and that's his line item in the budget. So it doesn't need to be a big amount, but just acknowledge that you are working hard to provide for yourself and probably the family, and you can reward yourself. Now, the other thing about the honesty with yourself is that you need to be honest about your behavior. Again, I'll use myself as an example. At one stage, I was living out at Hartebeespoort and I was working in Sandton. So I was commuting every day, and I thought, I'm so clever, I'm in finance. I don't need to have my budget written down. I have my budget in my head. So I had this number in my head for fuel because of the commute and all these other things. And as long as I didn't spend more than what I earned, I thought I was doing really well with my budget. But then I thought, when I sit with clients, the first thing I do with them is the budget. And I thought, I can't should practice what I preach. So I decided to write down my budget, and I did it properly. I did it on an Excel spreadsheet. So as Darren said, there's various options you can use, and you must find one that works for you, that you engage with, that you enjoy working with. So I've tried the apps. I don't like the apps. I'm old school. I want my Excel spreadsheet. I want to see the formulas. I want to see what's happening. So try different things, but find one that you engage with, and that you engage with regularly, not once a month. I'm so disciplined that I every morning update my expenses from the day before. So I've got a full-on tracking of what I'm doing. So what happened when I wrote my budget down? A few things. The first one is I realized that I wasn't spending nearly the amount of money that I thought I was on fuel. And I then had to identify where this money was going. And the second thing I learned about myself is that I'm really bad with cash. The moment I have cash in my wallet, that just disappears. I have no idea where I've spent it. So I have physically changed my behavior to not use cash. And everyone knows me. I never have cash. But by using my debit card, I get the SMS. So next morning when I recon my expenses, I don't delete the SMS until I've written it down. And I have now taken control of my spending and my budget and where the money goes. And it doesn't matter how irregular your money or your income is. It doesn't matter how big or small the income is. The principles apply all the time. And the third thing I learned about it is that the moment I don't keep my budget up to date is when I'm starting to move away from my budget and I do the naughty expenses. So it's true, like Vusile said, it's about discipline and being honest with yourself and taking control. The other thing that's important is to be aware of the expenses that is a must-have, like the debt repayment, putting food on the table. But there we go, putting food on the table can be very different. You can go to the market and go and buy fresh produce, at a good price that lasts, or you can go to a convenience store and pay premium. So again, be honest with yourself about where you're spending the money and why. But guess what? I'm not done yet. Back to the emotions. So be very careful when you've now not had an income for a while and you get a good gig and you get a nice pay and there's future gigs on the horizon and you think there'll be constant income. We are very good at justifying to ourselves that we've deserved this payment. And this is where the cornerstone of a good budget is so important. Go back, remember the months when you didn't have the income. Go and clear the debt that you incurred to just cover your needs, and then move forward. Then build up the savings. Then make sure your retirement's in good nick. And then when there's money left over, you can enjoy it. This is very powerful when you use a budget in that form, because if you have taken care of all these things and there is a bit of money left over, you can enjoy spending it, as opposed to justifying spending it and then having the buyer's remorse or the regret about your actions. But there's always things to be careful about. Credit cards is a very dangerous thing. We're very fortunate in our country. Our national credit regulator is very strict, so we are protected. But if you've got a good credit score, it's not that difficult to get a credit card. And I'll just get this credit card and I'll just have that one. I would urge you, if you have more than one credit card, to try and pay off the credit and just have one credit card. The expense of a credit card, we forget. I mean, there's the cost of the interest, there's the cost of the card. Oh, and then back to the image, hey? Can't have a blue card. It has to be the black one, hey?
The see-through one.
Yes, even better. Be very careful when you choose your credit card. Why are you choosing it? they've put all these services and enhancements that you can have, and you pay for it. Look at if you're going to use any of that. I have seen a very clear trend with even very wealthy people where they are moving to cards where they're using the services they're paying for, as opposed to just have the card so when they take out, people can notice that they have that fancy card. So there's definitely a shift across the board in all industries, in all walks of life, to have value what you're paying for when it comes to almost anything, but definitely on the bank and bank services side. Then the other thing I want to talk about is what I call the danger zones. Okay, so I'm going to take this bank's credit card because I can get this for free and I can do that with them. But then I also need that bank's credit card because that bank helps me do those things, you know? So again, we justify for ourselves. I would urge you to sit down and look at the annual cost of having the card and if you're using the benefits to your advantage. So there's nothing wrong if you fully understand the loyalty programs and you are using it to your advantage. Trust me, there are some banks that are regretting some of their loyalty programs because it's costing them a lot more than they expected it to do. So you can benefit from it, but understand the price you pay to access the loyalty programs. The other one that I'm quite adamant about is brand loyalty. And my favorite story here is growing up, my mother used Skip washing powder. My husband's mother used Omo. So we had this standoff between, should it be Skip or should it be Omo? Until one day I went to the shops and I saw there was another brand that was a third of the price. And I came home with the third brand. And guess what? My clothes are clean. My clothes smell well. There was no need for me to use Skip or Omo. Not that I say they're bad brands. I'm just trying to explain that we are so attached to certain brands that we don't always open our eyes for alternatives. And now is the time to be savvy when we make those decisions. And then the other one, this one's probably more for the ladies, so I'll say the men are not so bad, but although I've seen the specials at Golfers Warehouse, so I think men fall for it all as well. And that's the freebie one. So if you buy this product with this product, you get all these other products for free. No, you don't. You're paying for it. Okay, so I'm not saying don't spoil yourself or indulge every now and then, but do not think, you know, these freebie offers are there for your benefit. These companies spend millions and millions of rands on marketing to understand our psychology, understand how we look at money, understand how we want to feel better, to put these packages together so that we spend the money with their brands. Any questions? Am I being very harsh today? Sorry.
It feels like tough love, but I think maybe I can jump in with a question over here. So earlier on, you mentioned how you recon the next morning, you recon your expenses from the previous day. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So the spreadsheet I run, and I will make it available to Daphne, runs your actual balances. So it's got formulas in it. So you write down your budget, and then you write down the expense, and then it automatically puts the expense next to the line item in your budget. So you can see a tally of what you thought you'd spend on the line item and what you're spending. And so what I do is first thing in the morning, before I even check my emails, I open my spreadsheet and I update the Excel spreadsheet with the expenses from the day before, and it pulls through to the other sheets on the Excel spreadsheet. So then I can quickly have a look to see where I'm sitting at and where I've gone over, and it just gives me, I'm a control freak, so it gives me a sense of control. It's a bit excessive to do it daily. A lot of my clients do it on a Friday because they know they're not going to want to do it on the weekend. Other people think they'll do it on the weekend. I've never met anyone that does it on the weekend. So a lot of people do it either on a Friday or a Monday just to keep control, because again, if you leave it to do it once a month, you forget the expenses. You can use your bank statement, I suppose, to recon it. that for me is a bit too old school. I like it more real time. But it's about knowing where the money goes and identifying areas where you maybe got your budget wrong or where you're losing focus on your budget.
Great. Thanks, Natasha.
Okay. So when it comes to big ticket items, so if the fridge breaks and we need to replace the fridge, even the TV, again, it will be a debate. Is the TV a want or a need? But the fridge, I would say, is a need, especially in the heat in South Africa. Again, don't rush. And yeah, I'm also going to put a word of caution. We are in November. It is Black Friday month. Don't assume that the price you see is a bargain. Do your research. Check the prices. I have seen too many times that they just put the word Black Friday at the heading and people lose their marbles and go shopping when the thing is more expensive than it was last month on the normal price. So take your time, do your research, and wait a while. You know, don't just go and say, I now need it. I'm going to the first shop I see and I'm going to buy it. And the other tip I always share with people, oh, something's gone on, is that you, there's a, okay, I think it's fixed, is that you do not be shy to ask for discount. I know it's not in our nature, but the worst they can do is say no. And you'll be surprised how often they actually say yes, especially in the current environment. Business is tough, and I know it's kind of rude to ask for a discount, but you're also going through a tough time and you must make your money work for you. So just ask and see. If they say no, you say, okay, I still like your product, I'll still buy it. But they might say yes, and you might save some money. And then I'm going to end off with just reminding us that we must not forget that tomorrow comes. So we can be very overwhelmed in our day-to-day. We can feel very stressed if we've got debt. We can feel that, you know, what can we do to change our destiny and our outcome? And I think we've shared some very practical steps and ideas that you can do to change your daily behavior. But I want you to always remember tomorrow comes. We've now seen the importance of having an emergency fund with this pandemic that caught all of us off guard. But it's not just short-term tomorrow comes, it's long-term, to make sure you can look after yourself when you're older and you can't earn an income yourself anymore. And you don't want to be reliant on family or the state. So my closing thoughts is be honest with yourself, talk to yourself, talk to your family, identify your behaviors that might not be ideal when it comes to money, focus on changing those, and be aware of the daily decisions you can make that can make a difference in your ultimate outcome and your ultimate financial well-being. And I'm going to ask you to see if you can pass the sleep test. Now, the sleep test is, if you can sleep through the night without worrying about your finances, that means you've taken control. That means it might not mean you're out of debt. It might not mean you feel okay, but it means you're not feeling overwhelmed and out of control, and you've taken action to change your destiny. And if you can't do it on your own, get professional assistance. There's lots of people that can help you. Doesn't need to cost you an arm and a leg. There's a lot of people doing pro bono work that can help you take control and change the feeling of anxiety and angst coming out of the pandemic and the uncertainty around the future. So every decision is a moment of truth, and we can reinforce new behaviors daily. Thank you.
Natasha, thank you so much. That was so informative, so enlightening. We're going to probably get a couple of questions for you towards the end. And so please do stick around, and then also think about your tip for the week, because I'd love for us to get into that shortly. But that was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much just for sharing so openly, and even giving us some insight into what it is that you do. So at this point, guys, if you do have any questions, please type it in the chat. Natasha, there is one that's come through, so if you could get your video back on. So the question was, Why is it important to always have savings in the budget? And then where does one find the money for savings when you have so much money at the end of the money?
So that's a very, very good question. So the reality, if we look at human behavior, is if you only earned 8 Rand, you would only spend 8 Rand. If you earn 10 Rand, you would spend 10 Rand. So you need to have that mindset to say, if I get 10 Rand, the first 1 Rand, it's not there. It's not available to spend, because otherwise you will never have the money to save. So another way of explaining it for people in the formal sector, if you get an offer of employment and they say they're going to take 15% of your salary and put it away for your retirement, you can't say, no, I don't like that, I want that 15%. Then you learn to live with only the 85%. And that is what finding the money to save for yourself kind of requires. You need to make that decision to say that if for every 10 Rand I earn, the first 1 Rand or 2 Rand is not there. I did not earn it. It's already saved. Otherwise, you will never find the money, because if this month you earn 10 Rand and now you had a very successful show or something, and next month it's 20 Rand, you will find ways to spend the 20 Rand. Unless you are disciplined to say, and that's what Vasily also said, it's the discipline. And I know it's contradictive to say save and have debt, but the problem is that as soon as we kind of clear the debt, other things happen and it goes, and you'll never be in a position where you have no debt and now you can start saving. And I'm sure we've all heard the 8th wonder of the world is compound interest. And to benefit from compound interest, you need to put money away. You need time for the money to work for you. So yeah, that's the answer. I hope it answers the question.
I think it does. Thank you, Natasha. Vuisile, if you could join us for a quick question that came through for you. These ones came through in the privately chat through to me. So Vuisile, the question was, you've been doing this for 22 years. How long did it take you to master keeping personal and business income separate?
Yeah, very good question. Like I said earlier, even now I sometimes struggle. I don't want to sound like, wow, this is just easy for me to do. I also now even still struggle, but the discipline, I always make sure that I know what needs to go where. So, and it has not been easy. However, I know that I'm actually making a good way, because I mean, after 22 years, I managed to be an actor and be able to run my own company and have other businesses on the side, of which I think, Daryl, this is what we'll be discussing on the next, on the masterclass in terms of hustling. So that is, again, another thing that maybe some of the actors, or maybe actors, we need to think about.
Nice one. Here's a question from Regina, and either one of you can take this one, but it says, where is the best to save money, in the bank or at home?
I'm happy to take that one. So the at home one, my instinct is to say that's not a good idea, because there's no interest. The money's not working for you. It's just lying there. The bank obviously is good. You can earn interest, but to put it in a separate account. Even better is to put it in a investment savings account, which is more difficult to get to, because the harder it is to get to the money, the more you'll think about spending it, or the more you'll think before spending it. And I didn't mention in my talk, but we must be careful with what I call the just expenses. I'm just going to take some money to buy this. I'm just going to quickly do this. I'm just going to do this. Before you know it, your emergency fund or your rainy day fund is depleted, and all the money you've saved is gone. So make it as difficult as possible for you to get to the money, so that you have to think before spending the money. You definitely don't want access to it when you're at the end of a party night and like, the next round's on me, don't worry, I've got the money. So yeah, definitely in a bank or an investment account. Darren, can I answer Maya's question, please?
Yes, go for it. If you could just read the question and then answer.
So the question is, do you know of any organizations that specialize in retirement annuity plans for creatives? So the short answer is not specifically for creatives, but most of the new generation investments cater for people who might not be able to make regular monthly contributions. So if you speak to a professional advisor, I would recommend you just ask for a new generation retirement annuity. They allow you to make contributions as and when you have the money available, and it gives you the flexibility to build on your future on your own terms without unnecessary costs and penalties. And most of the providers out there today provide that. And I actually advise my clients to use that option anyway, because life happens and we want the freedom of choice to manage our contributions and our future on our own terms.
Thank you so much, Natasha. That's a great answer there. I think this has been a great start to the webinar series. It's been an absolute great start. I want to encourage you guys to let's share this information, and let's encourage some of the people, our colleagues, our friends, our associates, people that we know are in the same space as us, to join this webinar as well. We're going to have so much more wisdom coming through and so much more empowering information coming through from the presenters that we've got lined up for the rest of the sessions. I know that there was a question about is it good to do a fixed account, and how are they beneficial when doing savings? That is what we are going to be answering in next week's topic, right, when we talk about saving and investing. And so important that you try and attend all of these webinars, all of these sessions, because it's just going to be so empowering. Our winners for this week, so let me go to, where's my message? All right, so for your participation in today's webinar and just for your engagement, we have a 300 Rand shopping voucher, a ShopRite Checkers voucher that is going to you. And so that we're giving you 300 Rand that you can use on groceries. That means there's 300 Rand that you can save or allocate to something else in your budget for this week, all right? And so this week, our two winners are Wake. So Wake, you get 300 Rand, and then we also have Maya. So Maya and Wake, the two of you both receive a 300 Rand voucher. Everybody else, let's give them some claps and congratulations and snaps in the chat. We just want to say well done to you guys for your participation. The website address is up on the screen, guys. It's www.buildup.org.za, where you can get a replay of this webinar, as well as all of the information. The budgeting tool is available on the website as well. And so I'm going to bring back our guests for their tip of the week. So Natasha and Vuyisile, if both of you could come back on screen, and I'm going to ask you just to give us your final tip for the week while I'm reading some comments. We will be sharing through social media platform. Yes, so please share through the platform. The Facebook link is up on the screen as well. Some of you saying well done, some of you saying wow, thank you so much, much appreciated. Let us know what you thought of today's webinar as well. Let's kick off. Vuyisile, if you can give us your tip for the week.
Okay, mine is very easy, Darren. I can just say every cent counts, so spend it wisely.
Nice one. Short and sweet and so powerful. Vuyisile, thank you again once more for joining us. I think you've added tremendous value to the conversation. Thank you for giving us some insight into how you navigate this financial journey as an artist. And so thank you so much for adding value.
Thank you, Darren.
That's Vuyisile Mpela. I know we will bring Vuyisile back for one of the other webinars in the future. And so we're going to definitely get to engage with him again. Natasha, your tip for the week?
Doesn't matter how overwhelmed you feel, it's never too late to start to change your destiny.
Ah, nice one. Thank you so much, Natasha. Thank you for making it so practical. Thank you for making it so doable. Thank you for the tough love. I think you were hard on us, but it was so necessary.
I really enjoyed it, and I didn't mean to be harsh, but sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves. Sorry.
Absolutely. And that's why it's such a pleasure to have hosted you on today's webinar. Thank you so much for your time as well.
Only a pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thanks.
That's it, guys. That's it from my side. I think it's been an absolute great start. Please, as I mentioned, remember to join the Facebook group, Build Up for Artists. And then please go to the website, www.buildup.org.za. And then the challenge for the week is, if each and every one of us can invite at least 2 more people, that's going to be really, really great, because then we get to share this information with so many more people. I will see you on Thursday for our masterclass, and then next Tuesday again for our next webinar. But from my side, it's been a great pleasure hosting you. I hope that you've learned. I hope that you've been empowered as much as I have on today's session. And so thank you so much to every single one of you for joining us. My name is Darren August. Have a great day further. And I will see you on Thursday for the masterclass. Bye-bye.